The Prime Minister has warned that coronavirus restrictions in England may need to be tightened over the next few weeks to cut the rising numbers of infections. Boris Johnson also says it's right that schools should stay open where they can, and there are no plans to delay the return tomorrow of primary school children in many parts of the country. But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says it's clear the government has lost control of the virus and the new national lockdown should be announced within 24 hours. Here's our political correspondent, Chris Mason.
Arriving in a hurry to deliver a difficult message. The Prime Minister gave his first interview of the year today. He warned that coronavirus restrictions in England are likely to get worse before they get better.
It may be that we need to do things in the next few weeks that will be tougher in many parts of the country. I'm fully reconciled to that. And I bet the people of this country are reconciled to that.
The Prime Minister's analysis of this pandemic from the very start has often contained splashes of optimism, but today felt different. Vaccines and testing offer hope, but Boris Johnson struck a sombre tone as he leant on downbeat language about the need to be realistic about the very difficult period ahead. Primary schools in England outside London and parts of the southeast were expected to reopen this week, but some, at the last minute today, have decided to remain closed. In secondaries in England, there'll be a staggered start to the new term, with pupils expecting exams in the summer going back first.
Schools are safe. Very, very important to stress that. The threat to the risk to kids, to young people is really very, very, very small indeed, as the scientists continually attest. The risk to staff is very small. And of course, the benefits of education are so huge.
But the signs of everyday life, like these in High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire, are here to stay. And Labour have now gone a step further, calling for another England-wide lockdown.
It is inevitable that more schools are going to close. Many will be closed tomorrow morning. But the more important thing, in a way, is the national restrictions need to come in the next 24 hours. Let's not have the Prime Minister saying, I'm going to do it, but not yet. That's the problem he's made so many times.
The prospect of further restrictions, shops closed, a slump in demand, staff homeschooling their children, is placing colossal pressures on businesses and a demand for more support.
How do we get this bridge across from a really difficult Christmas period for small business through to the spring, or through to the Easter, which people are now thinking is the recovery? And actually the government should be throwing everything it's got at helping small businesses to survive the next 2 to 3 months.
And so 2021 begins as 2020 ended, shrouded in worry and uncertainty. The vaccines will allow us to turn a corner in tackling this pandemic, but the rest of winter looks bleak. Chris Mason, BBC News.
Well, with some schools reopening tomorrow after the Christmas break, there are concerns that there won't be enough staff because of worries over the new variant of coronavirus. The biggest teaching union, the NEU, is advising members only to hold classes for the children of key workers or those from vulnerable backgrounds. With more, here's our education correspondent, Dan Johnson.
Can the virus be controlled if these classrooms fill up again? It's a huge question with all kinds of complications and implications.
I've had 2 parents already contact me over the weekend to say that they've got concerns about bringing their children back to school.
In Oxford, some parents are making their own decisions, and primary school head teachers like Lynn are grappling with tricky issues ahead of children coming back here on Tuesday.
Yes, the government are continually reviewing the situation, but actually I want someone to say, no, we are going to close for 2 weeks, you're going to do something really well to make sure the children learn. And that, to my mind, would be far more effective than just having this constant anxiety behind everyone's feelings. Are we going to close? Are we not going to close?
But staying closed would mean childcare. It would mean learning from home and the risk that some kids miss out and fall behind.
Since he started, he's learnt to read and write. We wouldn't have been able to teach him that at home. So it's amazing he's had that opportunity. So I want it to continue.
I hope the teachers are prioritised for vaccination so that there is some element of safety in returning to schools, as it will benefit everyone, especially the young children.
At the moment, I think it would be better if we didn't. I think it would be better if all the schools were closed just till we got over this peak.
There's pressure from teaching unions, councils and some local public health directors. Some have already told their schools to stay closed. So the number of children who actually return from tomorrow isn't entirely in the government's hands now.
Some further closures do look inevitable, whether that's through decisions made by councils or the government having no other option, and that could well last beyond these first 2 weeks. So the priority's always been to keep schools open as much as possible, but there's an argument that taking some action now could help avoid further disruption in future.
Wales and Northern Ireland have delayed the return another week, and Scotland's schools won't fill up until the middle of the month. In Bradford, pupils are due to return under Tier 3, but staff here, like elsewhere, could vote with their feet after teaching unions declared classrooms unsafe.
Whether we open or not depends on the number of staff that we have, and it's not just teachers. There are other members of staff who've got real genuine concerns as well, including kitchen staff, and obviously we would need to feed the children at lunchtime, and if we haven't got kitchen staff in school because of their concerns, then that's another issue that I need to take into account when we make a decision.
This evening, the Local Government Association called for schools to have flexibility in making their own decisions. 20% of England's primary pupils already face a fortnight of home learning. More areas are now saying their schools should join them, and more schools are finding they haven't got the staff to open anyway. Dan Johnson, BBC News, Oxford.
And our political correspondent Chris Mason is here. Chris, Boris Johnson is talking about possibly tighter restrictions. What could that involve?
I'm told, Clive, that in the first instance that would be moving those areas of England not currently in Tier 4, the highest level of restrictions, into that tier if the data continues to look bleak. But given what Mr Johnson said this morning, there is inevitably a huge amount of speculation about what else might be coming. Now, I'm told that one idea, the idea of a curfew in England, is not currently being looked at. As far as Labour are concerned, we heard a few minutes ago that Sir Keir Starmer wants an England-wide lockdown. He wants to model that on what happened in March, with a real emphasis on the stay-at-home message that we got used to then, but with schools open where possible and support bubbles still existing. The government make the argument that that isn't vastly dissimilar from Tier 4. I think if we take a couple of steps back, what we're confronted by now is wall-to-wall uncertainty. If your local school is closed tomorrow, you can't be certain that it's going to reopen in a couple of weeks' time. If it's open, you can't be certain that it'll still be open in a week's time. I think psychologically we were glad, weren't we, the other day to see the back of 2020. I think the blunt truth is the first few months of this year could be just as bumpy.
OK, Chris, thank you. Chris Mason there, our political correspondent.